Look, I may be a Fujimoto enjoyer with all of his works, but I did not expect that type of ending. Talking about Denji and tonguing and Yoshida, just never would have expected those words, panels, and phrases to come together that way. I know it's definitely up Fujimoto's alley. I would expect something along those lines, just not here, not now, not within this timing, but I guess that kind of makes perfect sense. It was funny, don't get me wrong, it just caught me off guard, to put simply, especially when this chapter works as such a vital, I guess, starter for where the story is going to go from here. And when I say vital, I mean narrative changing, decisive, revolutionary in a way. There's a lot of things in here that have me concerned, a lot of things that spark my interest, that I want to have conversations about, a lot of things that are just funny to witness, like Naoto using her powers to take people's desserts, or at least that's the implication. You don't know if it's true or not, but it's funnier to think about it that way. And overall, the future of Chainsaw Man Part 2 looking bigger and brighter than ever. Finally, we have a major conflict brewing, and it's a lot bigger than I think a lot of us ever would have expected. We got teasers and some sort of explanation for it within the previous chapter, but this one is that turning point going into it. We're starting here. The Age of Devils is very much a real thing, and people are worried. So straight off the bat, I don't trust Yoshida. I think that's pretty standard. I think you probably feel the same. Secondly, I don't trust Fami. You may be a little bit more conflicted about that one, but more so after this chapter with what it shows us. She knows way too much. She's planning too many things, and the amount of control that she wants is interesting, to say the least. And thirdly, and this might shock a lot of you, I don't trust Naoto. Now you're probably recoiling at that, but hear me out. Ever since the reveal with Fami and the talk and the powers and everything that we thought Naoto wasn't, mind you, she's slowly taking these steps into reclaiming at least the power side of Makima, which is just the control devil from a neutral point. She starts to know a little bit too much. She starts to grow too quickly. Does that make sense? So I'm worried about the information that she potentially may be getting, whether it be from Fami or Yoshida or anyone else. That isn't Denji, of course. Now, I think being sheltered is not a good thing, right? Hence why she's at school. This is a great thing for her, but her abilities put her in a position of vulnerability. She can manipulate people. She can become extremely powerful very quickly without any real effort, and this puts a massive target on her back. There's people that don't want her here. Let me just remind you that Kishibe stole Naoto from a different country with no professional organization help that we know of whatsoever. That concerns me. That has always concerned me. Why wasn't Yoshida involved? Now, he could have been. He may even know that Naoto is the control devil, but I highly doubt it. I think Kishibe was worried that these organizations would go and try and hunt down this little girl. So instead, giving her to Denji, which sounds completely irresponsible, but has worked out really well to manifest and morph the control devil that we knew as Makima into something more fruitful, something better and healthier, not as dangerous. And currently it's working really well, but I don't have trust in the people surrounding her to potentially manipulate things, to make things worse, to skewer the events of her evolution. She's on a very tricky path. That's all I'm gonna say. One wrong step and she could spiral into this really weird realm of destruction that's very similar to Makima. We don't want to see that, even though it would be interesting to read. We don't want to see the amount of work that Denji has done, the amount of time and effort and sacrifice that he's done to raise this child into a good human being, and in part, a good horseman. So it is comforting to see her at school and just being a normal kid, just enjoying her food, loves the idea of learning, and she may be using her powers a little bit just to get a couple more food items on the menu. I think that's perfectly fine, but you haven't seen anything drastic or dangerous yet. Until Yoshida's organization storms in and points guns at her. A little bit weird, you know, didn't have to be that serious. Could have just picked her up after school instead of storming the whole building, but you know, Yoshida likes to make an entrance, and he's making an entrance that seems very villain-like, as he does, always. Pretty much since the beginning of part 2, Yoshida has been this weird, murky individual that we just know nothing about. Not even part 2 actually, in part 1 as well, he was the exact same way. This time now, he just has way too much emphasis, way too much knowledge, and he's trying to control things that probably he shouldn't control. This makes sense, however, because I think there is a very big conflict of what is right and what is wrong when it comes to Yoshida, especially with Fami. For me, this can go a lot of different ways. Yoshida and Fami could be working together just from different angles and different agendas. If you think about it hard enough, it kind of makes sense. They also could be trying to one-up each other. They also could not trust each other at all and just completely separate and doing their own things, trying to stop the other from getting the upper hand. Also makes sense. They could hate each other. That would make sense too. So currently we sit in this position where Yoshida has his organization trying to control the identity of Denji. Don't reveal yourself. If you do, you're done. Now he's threatening to take the dogs and Naruto away if he doesn't cooperate. And they always frame it under quote-unquote protection. Protection from what? Clearly, it's not the word that they're using. They're threatening him. They want to use him. They want to manipulate him so he can't move freely, right? Makes sense. If the Age of Devils is truly coming into existence, wouldn't you want the one person that could erase it for good fighting on the battlefield? But then that brings up the question, if whatever the Age of Devils actually spawns is bad for humanity, and it being erased makes it even worse, where do you draw the line morally, ethically? Does that make sense? I've already talked about this a lot of different times, but I think Nostradamus' prophecy, in my opinion, is the fear of fears. It's subconscious, it's kind of the root of all fears, and it would make sense as being like this crowning king of a devil that is attached to absolutely everything. It gets stronger just from every fear to ever exist, but it can't morph itself into the world. It takes quite a bit to actually come in, similar to how primal fears can't spawn into Earth either. Now let's just say this was the case, right? The Age of Devils spawned the fear of fears. How do you kill this thing? Oh, well, Denji can erase it. I don't think he should. And I think that may be where the conflict might come in with Yoshida or Fami, for example. Fami wants to get rid of it entirely. Yoshida might think, well, if you get rid of fear in humans, you kind of annihilate the human race in itself. If humans don't have any type of fear, any type of worry to anything that they're doing that's dangerous, the human population would just drop off like flies. So many more risks would be taken. The idea of fear stops you from doing silly things. Maybe I shouldn't walk in between traffic on a highway. Maybe I shouldn't jump off this building. But if you have no fear whatsoever, you'll do all those things single-handedly without a second thought. I think this conversation has come up quite a bit before when it comes to certain primal fears and the idea of the fourth horseman being death. Like Denji shouldn't erase death because similar to fear, if you erase the identity or the idea of death, it changes the whole dynamic of the human history and human race and what you do throughout your day-to-day life. Everything changes and can easily cripple civilizations theoretically. So there may be something more there morally or ethically when it comes to Yoshida. He's just framed as this big bad villain that's always getting in Denji's way. Especially that ending with Denji pleading so desperately, like he doesn't really care about himself, but then he gets really angry when he finds out that Naruto and the dogs have been captured as well. So he's willing to fight for the people that he loves. I don't know if Yoshida or his organization know that Naruto is the control devil, but I have a sneaking suspicion that he does. Maybe it's thanks to Fami too. Speaking of Fami, we have arguably the weirdest situation here, which still kind of works with the ideas that I've been building for her. If anything, it actually supports it a little bit more, but also contorts it in a way that is unexpected. Also, Asa is well and truly okay. She's in a hospital. They've kind of just sidelined her again, which I find kind of cute, even though she is the main weapon of this whole thing. Like, she has to be very close to Fami and Yoshida for all this to work, regardless of what they're doing, if they're the same or not. Fami has decided to go on a news broadcasting system and broadcast to the world that the savior of this prophecy, the person that's going to be your guiding light, is Chainsaw Man. He stopped Fall and he stopped the Gun Devil, which is funny. So they are kind of spreading propaganda about Chainsaw Man. And the person that's doing it, funny enough, Haruka. They're calling it the Chainsaw Man Society for World Peace. Now, did you know that Fall has actually had ripple effects? Supposedly the world is dealing with a lot of the ramifications of Fall spawning into the human world. That's interesting. Now we know that Denji had nothing to do with her defeat. It was just Fami putting her back into the Pokeball. So what is her goal? Is she trying to genuinely build an allegiance or a positive perspective of Chainsaw Man? And if that is the case, using Haruka as an example, which I still think he is one of those fake Chainsaw Mans, maybe they're trying to build a legions or army of fake Chainsaw Man, which kind of sounds funny. So you have have Denji, but then you have all of these other fake chainsaw men, and honestly, there is a lot of ways that can go. Theoretically, this should weaken Chainsaw Man, but Fami might genuinely just be obsessed with him. Is she trying to weaken him? Is she trying to use him as a weapon? Is she trying to build an allegiance to scare off whatever's coming? Is she trying to prop up a war by giving her the choice of any Chainsaw Man that she wants to make that power even more extraordinary? Do you see what I mean? So the question, what is Fami doing? She's considered the brains, Haruka's considered the face, and the body is the Chainsaw Man society. What we don't know, and hopefully we'll find out sooner or later, is how that conflicts with Yoshida, how that conflicts with Chainsaw Man, and how that conflicts with war. There was also another devil here. We only see the arm, it kind of comes out the darkness. We don't really know who this is. Oddly weird that it's humanoid, so it might be a separate contract that Haruka has made, or maybe something that Fami has given him, I don't know. It seems very overly sinister, but it's kind of interesting that it's here of all places. For me, however, I really enjoyed this chapter, had a lot of fun with it. I'm very interested in a lot of these ideas and theories and things that are currently building. I don't know where Fujimoto wants to take Chainsaw Man Part 2, but now we are seeing things a little bit clearer. And it's scary, and it's getting more and more massive in scale. If you've made it this far, I'd love to hear your thoughts on the chapter, some of your ideas or theories. Let me know. Leave a like, comment, subscribe. It supports me a ton, and I'd greatly appreciate it.